works by my math, but that doesn't mean
Okay.
much.
We'll just leave it at that. Yeah, we're grateful for you guys joining us for today's whiskey calendar tasting. I remember what day 25 is, but I have no idea what's in store between there and here because of my famously short attention span. Shall we crack open a window and see what we've got here, Evan? Or was there
Yeah,
something
let's go to
we should do or mention first?
no, I think we can just fire away at it
All
with day
right,
21.
day 21. All right. Now that figured out, you gotta go with the flow in the box. Open it the way it wants to be opened, not the direction you want to open it. We're starting off with the old Pulteney 15. Highland single malt, formerly the northernmost mainland distillery in Scotland, but then someone had to open a Wolfburn, and now someone's trying to out Wolfburn. So,
Hmm.
it's soon to be the third most northern mainland distillery in Scotland, but it's a gooder. It's a staff favorite. My dad's a big fan, calls it Putney, despite having visited and many different opportunities to correct him. Uh,
I know another guy that did that at another store a lot.
oh, okay. Well, I don't want to compare my father to that guy because
Yeah.
my dad's a pretty good dude. Um, Evan, tell us about Pulteney 15.
Yeah, so Old Pulteney in the town of Wick. There probably are still a few people that are upset because Old Pulteney, probably about 4 or 5 years ago at this point, revamped their entire lineup.
Mhm.
I know there were a lot of big fans of the 17 and 21-year-old that used to be available. Those were discontinued, and both were a bit more on the ex-bourbon or refill side of things, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
The new 15 and 18 that replace them are more on the combination of ex-bourbon and ex-sherry. So we definitely get a bit more sherry in the 15 than we used to on the 17, from what I recall.
Yeah. Well, it also doesn't help that a certain whiskey writer who shall not be named declared, I believe, 21 either as whiskey of the year or like runner up to whiskey of the year. And for
Mhm.
some reason, people give him credence. And I think some people were like, that whiskey disappeared about 2 or 3 years after it won said acknowledgement, which is not to say it wasn't a fantastic whiskey. It was absolutely a fantastic whiskey, but
Yep.
the words the person whom the words came from, you know, not great. Um, I like the new range. I mean, even we did a Pulteney tasting this fall, and I was blown
Hmm.
away again by how good the 12-year-old is at 40%, which is not something you hear me say very often. Um, and
Yeah, it is really good, surprisingly good for a 12. It is if there was one bottle out there that's a regular bottle that I wish they did a cast strength version of, that might be the one though.
there should be an old Pulteney 12 cast strength. Yeah, interesting fact about it: the distillery is only called Pulteney, and only
Hmm.
official bottlings are allowed to refer to the whiskey as Old Pulteney. Um, it's sort of like I guess it's like Macallan's the. I guess if you independently bottle Macallan, it's not a the, it's just a Macallan. But similarity, I guess. It's quite
That's
creamy.
right. Yeah, lots of like toffee and butterscotch Werther's originals on the nose for me.
Soft fruits like peaches and cream, bit of bread and butter pudding. Like there's a nice richness to it. Um, Evan, you might be onto something. I think that old 17 and 21, I think the 21 was more in the bourbon realm, but I think the
That
17 might
seems
be
right.
more sherried. Um, but yeah, it's definitely a departure from the 12-year-old where you're getting into like richer fruits. You've still got that nice sort of salty maritime character. Um, but it's very well put together.
Yeah, that combination of salt and toffee and that nutty note that comes along with it on the palate, um, are really enticing.
Oh, yeah. It's like Christmas cake on the beach.
Yep. A little bit of dried fruits coming through as well.
Getting a little bit of like tobacco, like cigar tobacco creeping in there. I'm actually the weighting of the sherry is actually surprising me. I didn't remember it being this heavily,
Hmm.
at least flavor profile wise, sherried. Certainly creates another option for people if they're looking for a heavily sherried, not a heavily sherried, a moderately sherried single malt at a decent price point. I don't think we've shared it, but this is the packaging. One word to the wise. I believe their packaging is entirely recyclable, which is quite notable these days.
Cool.
Pick it up by the top. The tops are actually remarkably stable, but there is always the risk that just it comes off. Yeah, I think this is a trend we like to see because, especially for your everyday drinking drams, sometimes people don't want the tubes and then we got to crush them down to put them into recycling. So I think going the all paper route, especially for stuff under, let's say, $500 makes a lot of sense. Like, get rid of the, plastic and the magnets, or the box altogether for that matter.
Yeah,
Who needs
absolutely.
it? So,
Yeah, really pleasant dram. What I really like about Old Pulteney as someone that sells whiskey is it's a really fun whiskey to get into people's hands so you can get the difference between being a maritime whiskey and a peated whiskey. Because a lot of people think they're one and the same, and that's not necessarily the case. This is a cool way to get some coastal influence without getting any of the peat. And there's other drams out there that do give you a little bit of that, but Old Pulteney is usually the one that comes to mind quickly.
yeah. No, it's definitely one of our top recommendations. I think I love putting this out there as a counterpoint to Oban. Not that Oban's not good. It's just
Mhm.
I think Pulteney kicks it up a notch. You get a bit better quality and better value
Totally.
as well. And a higher ABV. Who doesn't like a little bit higher ABV? Uh, Evan, any other interesting facts you want to share about Pulteney that you've discovered in your
Uh,
research and blogging?
just one that you mentioned to me where like they have this wild super squat still in there where I believe it was you that told me that they actually cut the top of the still off so that it wouldn't go through the roof essentially.
Well, yeah, there's always lots of different explanations for it. And yeah, what Evan's talking about is a funny, when you go to Pulteney and you're in the still room, you can't help but notice that one of the stills has a flat top to it. And the most logical explanation for all this is they didn't measure properly, or,
Yeah, I
it,
believe it's the one just in the back here.
yeah, yeah. If you've got it, I was looking for an image, but if you got something there, you go. Yeah, you can sort of see it there. And I've heard multiple different explanations for why it is the way it is. One of them was that it was because it originally had a rummager going down into it, which like drives a chain, um, in order to keep, uh, the wash from burning onto the bottom of the still. I'm going to call BS on that one because why would you have your rummager driving from the top? Like, imagine the tension that would put on the piston going down the middle of the still. Like, it would just be a recipe for disaster. Another version of it that I've heard, because I've been there probably 4 or 5 times, was that it was so that the vapors rising up quickly, hitting that flat surface, would bounce back down and get redistilled. Also going to call BS on that. I mean, it's a shorter squatter still. The line arm's probably more crucial in terms of that redistillation and how they run the still. But ultimately, I got Malcolm to admit one time when I was there, he's the distillery manager, that in fact the real reason is they mismeasured and the still was just a little too tall, so they had to lop a little bit of the top off.
Yeah,
So
that darn metric versus imperial conversion probably just
that's what
got
I mean.
them.
I think people, when you're looking at an old building, you're like, okay, our roof is X tall, but your roof
Yeah,
needs beams across it. So there's like a whole bunch of things you don't think about. So it's
yeah.
why you would not trust me to design your home or like hit out the specifications, because I would totally miss something and it would be important.
Yeah, I do like the ball kind of shape that they have. It almost looks like some weird bathysphere
Well,
uh
and going back to
of their stills too.
going back to their bottles, I mean, that's the reason why their bottles are the way they are. And I think,
Yeah.
in a world of wacky bottles and everybody trying to peacock, I mean, at least this one here has some rationale behind it. Like, it's
Hmm.
it's a reflection of the stills. Maybe the Lindor's Abbey bottle as well has some, it's trying to pay homage to what bottles might have looked like 500 years ago, but in the modern era, it just looks dated. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. such is the way of things. Comments here, Chris saying brown paper sacks are the best. Interesting side note about that. Our brown paper sacks are an inch too big for the city. So we're gonna have to either lop an inch off of them or charge 16 cents per sleeve. So I think you know what we're gonna do for the first little,
Oh,
so we find slightly smaller bags.
oh
Is
man, that's awesome.
yeah. Also, yeah, I think we have to charge for every bag now, a minimum fee starting on the 16th. So that'll be, and it can't be compostable because the federal government saw fit to think that wasn't a good idea. So thank you for that. But anyway,
Oh,
politics. We've only had one dram, Evan. We've already jumped right into it. Should I just
that's
crack
right.
the window and try to move on from this moment? I
Yeah, we obviously need more whiskey.
think you're probably right. Now my box is looking rather tattered. It's kind of hard to find window 22. Uh, there we go. Up near the logo. Up comes the bottle. Ooh, Bowmore 18. Uh, I'm excited about this one. I love Bowmore 18.
Was
I
that
love,
22 or 23 that you opened?
what's that? Oh, did I jump ahead?
Potentially.
Oh, I might have looked at, oh, I'm sorry. I've spoiled that for everybody.
It's all
I'm
good.
still excited about the Bowmore though.
I was worried because I think we've done a pretty good job at putting these together so far.
We have done a pretty good job putting it together so far. Evan sorted out the order. Oh, it's the Barry's Dalyuen. The first ever Kensington Wine Market Vinsanto cask or
Yeah.
Vinsanto cask finish. And this is one of those whiskeys that we file under the category of Andrew making a grandiose statement that he had to later backtrack on, such as there's no way in hell we're going to bottle a Vinsanto cask whiskey. And then I remember Sean and I in particular quite liked it. The problem with the berry samples is they're quite wee. Like imagine
Mm.
half what we've put into these, and that's what I get to choose a cask with. And I think Sean and I ended up, maybe Kurt. But yeah, just I love this. It's got this like nice wine gums note to it. It's soft. It's got that nice sort of waxy,
Yeah.
slightly meaty profile that you get from Dalyuen. And yeah, Evan, tell us about this dram.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of maybe sharpness on the wine side, but nothing crazy. Shows really, really well and just adds to the waxiness, in my opinion, of the Delian as well. Some nice citrus notes in there too. But so Vinsanto, I believe I did do a little bit of a write-up on here. Vinsanto is an Italian fortified dessert wine. The name Vinsanto translates to holy wine, so apparently that means Italians like this stuff. Uh, Italian dessert wine, most often made in the region of Tuscany, and it's made in a similar fashion to Amarone in Veneto. For those of the that know the Valpolicella region and what they do to dry the grapes to actually make them more concentrated before they press them with Amarone. Similar idea with Vinsanto. I think they actually let them raisinate even a little bit longer because of that, or with that, and then they fortify it as well, like you would with the sherry or port in some cases. But you're usually looking at 14 to 19% alcohol on Vinsanto.
Mhm.
Tends to make a really nice, nutty, rich, viscous dessert wine.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing I love about Vinsanto, I don't drink it all that often, is that you get a bit more balance from it than you get from, say, ice wine, which is just over the top sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's because of that skin contact and it's because of like drying the grapes as opposed to just freezing them and extracting the sugars. It's a characterful dessert wine. I think I might even prefer it to Sauterne, to be totally honest.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a very characterful dessert wine, and like sherry, it seems like oxidation plays a key role,
Mhm.
where you're getting a lot of those nutty tones coming in because of it.
Who doesn't like a little oxidation?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's interesting. Like the color on it is so pale. So you know that the cask it was in initially, refill, probably American oak of some sort. And then that Vinsanto cask, like if this was first fill, at the very least, we can be confident they rinsed the cask
Hmm.
before they put the whiskey in, because if there's no color coming from it, you're getting some of the tannins. There's a little sweetness, but I don't think I would suggest that that sweetness is coming from the wine. Um,
Yeah, I agree. I think to my mind, the Vinsanto cask is just amalgamated with the Delio in itself really nicely, where you do get the combination of waxy and fruity. The nuttiness comes in. You got these really nice spices that are probably coming from the wine side of things as well, is my guess, coming through there with everything too.
The spice is quite like it's really growing, so it's maintaining that really nice balance of sweet and spice. A little bit toasty, 54.9. The interesting thing to me is
Hmm.
like the alcohol is almost completely unapparent to me on this. Like it's really more the tannins and the spice that are really kicking through.
Yeah, it's the sort of the viscosity of the on the palate for me that and that just the decadence of everything that just works really, really well for it.
Yeah. Now, Evan, in the interest of science, did you try adding any water to yours now or
No,
previous?
but I will.
You know what? I'm going to as well. I typically am not a big fan of the adding of the waters, but and especially, I don't know if wine casks are going to come across the same way as sherry, but we'll give it a whirl, see what happens.
I find
Um,
dessert wine tends to be a little bit more forgiving than a dry wine for cask finishes and adding water, but
hmm,
we'll see.
all right, single drop, give it a whirl.
Maybe a touch more mint coming through there on the nose for me.
Well, it's definitely softened the nose out. Yeah, it's got kind of a um clovey, like sort of
Yeah.
stage, like there's a herbaceousness coming out now.
Yeah, I agree with you on the cloves.
Doesn't really do the palate any harm.
No.
If anything, it kind of, well, at least at first, it seems to tone that bitter spice, but the bitter spice picks up again with the drop of water towards the
Hmm.
finish. Does show a bit more fruit now. Say like bitter grapefruit, orange, maybe a
Yeah.
bit like or like charred orange rind or something in there too.
Yeah, I was thinking like candied orange peel even, like just that oiliness along with it too.
So Ewan's an interesting distillery. It's a distillery we don't see very often. We tend to see it almost exclusively from independent bottlers, and in
Hmm.
particular from bottlers like Signatory. Um, and a lot of it seems to be refill because I think this is whiskey that they're picking up that was never, even in the last decade, intended to be bottled as single malt. It was all destined for blending. And those refill casks, I think, work well when you get to like that 20, 25 year and up sort of territory for like those nice tropical maturations. But a lot of the Dalyuans we see are they're either young and very like kind of malty and meaty with not a lot there, or they've been finished in a wet finish sherry cask and sort of
Hmm.
jacked up. But this is nice because I think it's somewhere in between those two different styles.
Yeah, it doesn't go into the tropical, but you do still get, or at least not for me, but you still get those fruity notes. And it's Del
Mm.
Yuen for me is everybody looks for Clynelish when it comes to those waxy notes, and I think Del Yuen is a close second to Clynelish, stylistically for getting a lot of that out of there.
But you also get that meatiness, so it's kind of like
Mhm.
maybe a love child between Mortlick and Clynelish.
Yeah, that's a good way
So,
to put it.
all right. Shall we pretend that I didn't already open day 23 and no, I'm just
Yeah.
Bowmore 18. I love Bowmore. What can I say? I was just so excited to get to the Bowmore. That's all it comes down to.
Yeah,
Evan,
same here.
tell us about the Bowmore.
Yeah, so oldest distillery on Isla, uh, essentially built not too long after the town of Bowmore itself was established, if I remember correctly. But this for me, the 18 is just like it is. It should be the flagship in the line of the Bowmore lineup, in my opinion. It has just been perennially, at least for the last 5 or 6 years, a fantastic dram. Even at 43% alcohol, it'd be neat to see a higher ABV version, but it's just so well balanced. It gives you everything that you want to see in Bowmore, where you get a little bit of that floral note. It has these enticing sherry notes, almost has like a full-on Welch's red grape juice note to it, going straight through everything as well. But just is a tremendously balanced and not over the top Isla dram. where in a sea of Isla drams that we get right now, and I love the smoke and peat. But a lot of distilleries and a lot of the younger bottlings hit you over the head with hammer with the peat, whereas this one, it's there, but it's just it's had time to become part of the whole instead of taking the four.
Yeah, it's quite elegant. Uh, as you said, that little bit of lavender, that floral sweet lavender is coming through. Uh,
Mhm.
it's buttery. There's nice sherry tones, like straying into like the dark fruits and tobacco. But there's also like a really nice mushroominess, like oyster
Yeah.
mushroom. Uh, it's savory on the nose. There's nice chocolate in there. There's a lot going on. I 100% agree. I would love to see this at like 45 and a half or 46%. But for 43, this is a banger.
Mhm. Yeah, we are starting to see the price creep on up on this, which was bound to happen. It was uh, a quietly incredible price for quite a long time for the 18, where you could get it oftentimes for around 100 or 110 bucks about a year ago. Those days are long gone now. They changed quickly, but it's still a pretty darn good value in my opinion.
Possibly long gone.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say we're going to go back to those prices, but I think that the era of rapidly increasing whiskey prices is over. And we're already starting to see like some importers giving like ridiculous discounts just to move stocks. So I don't think things are churning quite the way they used to. A whiskey like Bowmore 18 might be an exception, but I know that in the case of Bowmore, Canada is one of its most important markets, and there's not a lot of Scotch brands where that's the case. Like we've been
Hmm.
supplanted by places like China because they'll pay more and just take things. But Bowmore's always been, for the longest time, I think it was the number one selling Isla whiskey in Canada. So it's definitely got a following. Interesting footnote to your story, Evan, about it being built a few years after the town. My
Hmm.
favorite story around Bowmore involves the fact that the town is not in its original location. It used to be around the bend on Loch Indoll in front of Isla House, which was the Laird of Isla's home. And in the late 1700s, he was
Hmm.
fed up with this town that was growing at the foot of his mansion. And he did as you did in those days, he had the town moved. And the town was moved to the current site, which is why it's got like a straight, wide main street, like something you never see in a really old Scottish town, going from the pier all the way up to the round church. And Bowmore was built just a few years after the town. But yeah, an interesting history, beautiful little spot to visit, even when the weather's terrible. And
Yeah, it is a remarkably grid-lay town
mhm,
because of that for something that's built on terrain on the coast.
mhm.
Um, yeah, we didn't spend a ton of time in Bowmore when I was there in 2019, but we did walk around a little bit, and it's a fun place to just tool around and see what's there.
Absolutely. Yeah, very pretty. Well, what I love about this 18 is it's straying into those tropical tones that you get in some of the
Yep.
old Bowmores. So on the palate, you're getting those nice sherry tones, the chocolate, the tobacco, that earthy mushroominess, that little bit of, floral, sweet lavender. And it's getting a little bit on the tropical side on the fruit. So, I mean, I would love to see this exact same liquid if it had been left in the cask for just a couple more years. I think it would be
Hmm.
a tangy tropical fruit bomb.
Yeah, and it's almost like they don't do that because the 25 for me at least shifts gears tremendously.
Yeah.
Um, and not in a direction I tend to like. I think this is far better than the 25 personally.
Yeah. I mean, I know a few other staff and I, like Kurt, are kind of the mind that we think the 25 right now is drinking as good as it's drank in years. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's definitely more towards that bourbon end. It's more, the smoke is more prominent. Like it's very elegant, soft smoke, but it makes more of an impact in it than it does in the 18. I mean, you could take a sip of the 18 and be excused for not picking up the smoke or the peat in it because it's so mellow. And that
Hmm.
sherry, that overlaying of the sherry on there really tames it down. But it's, yeah, just a really nicely balanced dram.
Yeah, for those of you that got the Uber calendar, and I'm not going to spoil too much, but there is a whiskey in the Uber calendar that um, tremendously reminds me of the Bowmore 18, but is unpeated.
Mm, cool. Well, that's a surprise for me for later, Evan. Uh,
Mhm.
shall we crack another window and see what we've got?
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to do 24 and not 25. Scotch Malt Whiskey Society 36.209. Will you join the Worm Tub Club? Evan. I don't know. I mean, I'm already a card carrying member of the Worm Tub
Yeah.
Club.
So is your dog. Yeah.
So is my dog. Yeah, it's true. Uh, what can you tell us about this whiskey and maybe the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society?
Yeah. So we do have Rob and Kelly Carpenter on here too. So they can fact check me in real time on this if they need to. So SMWS or Scotch Malt Whiskey Society, fantastic whiskey club. Um, uh, I am a member of it,
I was gonna say,
and
not
I
just
know
because
there's a.
they would have you as a member, right?
That's right. Yeah. I probably have more respect for them if they wouldn't have me as a member, but that's another story. But we do have a lot of SMWS members in on this, so I'm probably preaching to the choir. Um, if you want independent bottlings and you're a fan of independent bottlings, and if you're not a fan of independent bottlings after doing this whiskey calendar, I'm kind of shocked. Because not just because we do our darndest to throw them in your face at Kensington Wine Market, but also because I think the calendar did a really good job of showcasing a little bit of what's out there for SM or for independent bottlings in general. But Scotch Malt Whiskey Society is the largest independent bottler members club in the world. They've been around for 40 years as of this year. They were founded in 1983. And each distillery they bottle consecutively is part of the codification that they have number wise. So when you see the 36, that means that's the 36th distillery that they ever bottled. And that happens to be Ben Rinnes Distillery. And then the 209 after the decimal means that's the 209th cask that they bottled of Ben Rinnes under the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society banner. Fantastic name with the Worm Tub Club because Ben Rinnes does have worm tubs, as do a lot of great distilleries that are usually sought after by a lot of different whiskey geeks out there.
And Evan, this is a whiskey that's not yet available. It's a pending release from the society.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to say that it will be in the next outturn next year.
Yeah, all of 1 week away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, the sherry, like the sherry tones on this are quite, prominent. It's spicy and tangy. Um, the Ben Renison is a distillery that I struggle with, but the nose on this is quite nice. And I think the sherry has added a nice like layer and weight to it. Maybe that's what Ben Rennis needs. Ben Rennis just needs sherry because a lot of those like refill cask and bourbon cask Ben Rennis have found they're too barnyardy for me.
Yeah, I really like this one. It's almost like an extension off the it's like you did a cask finish on the old malt cask Ben Rinnes that we had a couple
Mhm,
years back. That was actually in our 2023 calendar where you're going away from the nuttiness. It's still
mhm.
there, but you're getting more of the dried fruit notes and that Christmas cake note along with it as well. Does have some nice meatiness to it without being over the top.
Yeah, there's like a sweet and sour pork thing going on for me. Like it's quite
Hmm.
I love the palate on this. It's bright. The sherry's nice. No trace of sulfur. Like it's a clean sherry, but like both sweet and like dry nutty at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, really nice bit of savoriness without going into the big S word, at least not for me.
Mhm.
A lot of along with that sweet and sour, almost into a soy sauce slash teriyaki note for me, like you're biting into some teriyaki beef jerky.
Some hoisin sauce too. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, morphing into chocolate. That meatiness does come through, and it's like having like teriyaki chicken wings. Like they're it's got a nice palate, like a bit of barbecue brisket in there as well. Or not brisket, maybe more like baby back ribs with like a honey
Hmm.
garlic glaze on them.
Yeah, yeah. Burnt ends is a note that we've used in a few different drams, and I get that on this as well, along with what you're saying.
Yeah. I'm part of me wants to, like, in the interest of science, add a drop of water, but the other part of me doesn't want to because I think it's pretty good as it is and I don't want to mess it up.
I'm gonna try it with water just because I've got a little bit more in my bottle afterwards to drown it out if that doesn't work. So
Well, you're a braver man than I. I don't think water and sherry cask whiskeys go very well
mhm.
together. In fact, I think they're less likely to go well together than they are in bourbon cask. But Evan, you tell us if we're safe. We're in the safe space.
Yeah, so nose wise, it goes a little bit more into cloves and hickory for me. Seems like it's going to be a little bit drier palate wise. Let's see.
Yeah.
Goes a little bit tangier.
Hmm.
There's maybe just a touch of disconnect where it starts to pull apart between the two different casks, but still holds together fairly well for me. Doesn't kill it.
All right, you've got me intrigued. I've added a drop of water to see what happens. I like that kind of Dutch licorice, like
Mhm.
salty licorice tone coming off of it too.
That sticks around and it gets a little bit more drying but tangy on the palate in a cool manner.
Yeah, I think I'm a no to water, but it's not the worst with water. So
Mhm.
it's a better
Yeah,
drink.
a little bit more burnt brown sugar there
Mhm.
with water too.
Well, and it kind of highlights those kind of clove notes, those sort of bitter spices,
Hmm.
and tones the sweetness of the sherry down. So I say, don't drown it, drink and eat. Uh, cool. Any other thoughts on that one or comments on that one, Evan?
So as we're going on to the last one, for those of you that have done the Scotch or the Kensington Wine Market whiskey calendar over the last 8 or 9 years, I guess.
The
Um,
last nine, because we
thank
didn't have
you.
it for the very first one. But from the second edition on, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society was a part, and it occupied the prestigious top panel at the top of the box.
Yes.
Um, but
Yeah.
circumstances required a change, and we looked at that, and it just was not going to work as well with 100 ml in there. Now, whether we'll be able to do what we did this year again, which we'll bring up maybe at the end, is a
Yeah.
whole other story. So you never know. Next year we may be back to the 50 mils and 100 ml on top, but I kind of hope not, because I think the overwhelming feedback that I've heard from people coming into the store is how much they like the calendar this year and how much better the range is and the quality of whiskeys in it. So,
Nice.
but
Yeah, agreed.
for 9 years in a row, the society had our Christmas Day bottling, and it was a treat because it was 100 mils. And
Hmm.
Kelly ensured that that happened for many, many years, and for that we are eternally grateful. Um, but what's behind door number 25 this year, Evan?
I'll crack it and find out. While you're doing that, I just want to say Chris Walker says the Ben Rennes is the whiskey of the calendar for him so far. I agree. Like it's a fantastic whiskey.
Oh,
Uh, uh, Kelly Carpenter either agrees with you or she's watching football in the background and just giving the field goal, it's good sign from football. I'm not sure if she's an NFL fanatic or not. Wouldn't put it past her.
I'm going to go with probably not. Um,
Yeah.
the Flames are playing tonight, though, but I'm not sure we would be getting that excited this early on in a game.
I was going to say the Flames are as likely to kick a field goal as to score a goal at this point, aren't they? So
but they're playing at or above their talent level right now. So what are you going to do?
mhm.
Uh, Gordon MacPhail Linkwood 25 year.
Yeah,
Cool addition. I think one of the reasons why we put this in as number 25 this year is because it was a 25-year-old, and also sherried. Uh, we had Gordon MacPhail in some earlier incarnations of our calendar, but they stopped doing 50 mils. This year we may have gone a tiny bit overboard on the Gordon MacPhails, but I think the quality of the whiskeys speaks for themselves. Like, they've been without question excellent. And yeah, it's a company we like working with because it's sort of apart all on its own in the industry as far as buying, well, formerly buying new make spirit, putting it
mhm.
into its own casks and maturing it. I kind of hope they will do it again someday, but uh, we'll be able to drink Linkwood 25 from Gordon MacPhail for the next 25 years. So we have that at least to kind
Yep,
of feel good about, because they've got many years of this whiskey still
yep.
maturing away from the cellars.
On Gordon MacPhail whiskey wise, like I don't know if they do a bad dram right now. They with their with their own distillery in Ben Romick and with the opening of the Cairn, which we haven't seen whiskey from yet, but high hopes on that as well.
Although it's not really, it's probably Strathisla, but
Yeah.
it's, go to the distillery and try this. You'll want one. I assure you.
Mhm. But yeah, I of the stuff in the calendar, there was definitely not a bad one. Some great stuff between this the Morlock 15, the Ardmore 2000 that we had,
Mhm.
and the Glen Talkers 2007.
Mhm.
All four really good drowns, and hopefully I'm not missing one in there. Maybe I am.
I don't think so. The nose on this, now the 25 Linkwood and Mortlake typically are from a mix of refill and first fill sherry. Um, but these are Gordon MacPhail's spec casks, which are the thicker stave, longer seasoning. And
Mhm.
what I really love about them is that even when they're first fill, they're not like gooey and over the top. And they're also not overly woody. And the reason for that is that I think that longer seasoning time. Uh, it's not just a quick shove the sherry in the cask for 6 months, fire it off to Scotland and fill it with whiskey. It's, I think, 4 to 6 years is my memory is their specified period of time. Um, and yeah, there's very few companies that do that probably because of cost. And they're just one of those weird family-owned businesses that's bottling whiskeys that they laid down 80 plus years ago that maybe those costs aren't as relevant as they are for people buying things on the open market, but they're able to put that quality in there. And I think what's really encouraging is we've seen that quality go into Ben Romick, and what they've
Mhm.
done with Ben Romick over the last 2 decades is incredible. I mean, it's, I think, one of the best distilleries out there right now.
Yeah. Yeah, this is stunning stuff. I'm hesitant to go back and read my tasting notes on it because I feel like they didn't do it justice now. I was in a bit of a race to do 50 tasting notes in 25 days, so
You're
it
starting to
was
feel jaded because you have
yeah,
the weight
that's
of
right.
not one but two whiskey calendars on your shoulders.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried to make up for that fact by just drinking copious amounts of wine over the last couple days, but I feel like my palate's more refreshed now because of it.
Okay.
But this is such a, as you said, like a great combination where you get the, like it seems like it's going to go to into big bold sherry on the nose, and then on the palate there's these great like apple and apple pie and orchard fruit notes to it.
Hmm.
Um, my parents came into town and spent Christmas with us, and my mom made cinnamon buns, but she used apple pie filling in the cinnamon buns, and it just reminds me of that right now in a really cool manner. It's got a bit of that cinnamon note in there as well.
The uh the sherry tones on this are not so much that you can't sort of see that Linkwood spirit come through. And for me, Linkwood's got this nice floral, almost pillowy feel to it. Like every time I have a Linkwood, as long as it's not like over the top sherried, it makes me think of like cartoon clouds, like the Care Bears, where they're like they're so thick and heavy that you can almost taste them and feel them.
Yeah.
And yeah, that to me, I like that about this. It's sherried, it's boldly sherried, but it's really balanced. I
Mhm.
love that they switched to 46% a few years ago on these because
Mhm.
I think it helps them out. Even though Gordon MacPhail's always said they only did a light chill filtering, it wasn't as heavy as most other companies do. I think having that little bit of higher strength gives you a bit more body, a bit more mouthfeel, and a bit
Yeah,
more concentration of flavor.
absolutely. I think that concentration is key. Um, it just keeps it at another level or brings it up to another level
Hmm.
uh, in a really cool fashion. But
The
yeah,
interesting thing
Liquid 25 is fantastic.
the interesting thing to me, and I'll admit I've been spoiled for what I've had the opportunity to sample over the last 20 years, but it actually reminds me of some of the old like 60s vintage Gordon MacPhail Linkwoods where
Yeah.
they're going really tropical. This is starting on that tropical curve. It's not quite as dark and rich, but those ones as well, even though they were heavily sherry, they were not sherry bombs. They weren't over the top. And it's interesting to see that there's a stylistic choice they're making with their casks and then what comes out of them down the line. Some of them are more heavily sherried than others, but we've done tastings with those really dark 1990s casks, and they're not as big and punchy as you'd think they are, like soupy. With respect to the sherry, they've got a nice balance.
Like the interesting thing about that too is with those, I've had a couple of the 60s and 150s liquid, if I remember correctly, and from G&M, and they were all fantastic, like some of the best drams I've ever had.
Mhm.
But that would have been from the old liquid distillery, if I remember correctly, which where they created the new liquid distillery or a second facility right next to the first one, I think in around 85, and then shut down
Hmm.
the second one or the first one if I recall eventually.
Well,
Might have
I'll
my
be
dates
honest.
wrong there.
No, you're probably right. I'll be honest. I know virtually nothing about liquid because why would I? There's no official bottlings. You only ever see it from IBs. They're never the same. And so there's no romanticism around it. And
Mhm.
if that's the case, it's probably one of those hideous early 80s Diageo conversion projects. So worth delving into. All right, Evan, what do we do now? Do we do the speed round or the poll? I forget what's the program.
Let's do speed round then poll, and we'll try and do it quick because the poll's a little bit longer than there. I did manage to do a pick five from these 25 poll for your favorite of the
Hmm.
favorites of the calendar. Derek, while we're running through again from the beginning here with the old Polteny 15 is saying this was my favorite grouping, and from the calendar, 2 or 3 of these would be make my top 5. Very cool.
The nose on the Polteny 15 reminds me of my mom's mincemeat pie. The palate,
Yeah.
it's not quite as dark and rich as that, but it's a balance of buttery, sherry, and that salty, kind of salty caramel. Lovely.
Yeah, I'm gonna add Cracker Jack's popcorn, caramel corn to that one.
Uh, the Del Ewan. I think this is probably what it smells like in a winery during the crush.
Hmm.
A little bit of grape juice on the floor, bit of dirt mixed in.
It's got
The stems,
just a touch of French onion soup or even onion rings for me right now too.
almost maybe a bit like you might be leading me astray, Evan, but like sour cream and onion chips.
Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah, you can get a bit of that on the palate uh, in a cool fashion. Still has that nice waxiness too.
Party, wine gums, nice spices, a little bit of sweet, some earthy tones starting to get like tobacco-y, leaf litter. It's young and vibrant, but yeah, it's got a nice balance to it and no rough edges.
Over 18.
All right. You know, I'm going to agree with Derek on this because I think the last three of this lineup especially were knockout. I mean,
Hmm.
even the first, like I like that Del Ewan cask, but I mean, first, second, fourth, and fifth on this were all dynamite
Yeah,
grams.
yeah. I don't know what else to say about this one. Like a smoky, creamy Earl Grey tea right now on the nose and palate.
This one tastes like I want a big pour of it, and I'm just gonna settle in on the couch and tune out for the next hour or two.
Yep. Back
All
to
right,
the 36.28, the soon to join us in the January outturn.
the Worm Tub Club.
Oh man, I love that note or the nose on here where it's like the teriyaki hoisin.
We're gonna toss some marmalade in there now, like
Good
a really
call.
rich, like Moroccan marmalade.
Yeah, a little bit of uh, prosciutto wrapped dates that you baked in a with a balsamic glaze.
Yeah, lots of
Even
like rich fruits.
a touch of Dr. Pepper right now on the palate.
Ooh, all right, and liquid. I kind of feel like I need a quick refresher because I think if we were going by strength and boldness of dram, we probably would have put this one last today.
Hmm. Hmm.
I just I think Evan, the Linkwood 25 for the 25th was the only adjustment I made to your whole lineup because I just like the idea of the 25-year-old.
You also made the correct adjustment for starting with a bang, where we started with the Daffodil 15.
Oh, right. Okay. But I don't think I told you
Everything
which
else
one to
was me.
pick. I just told you to pick something that would be
Yeah.
kind of, you know, not controversial, but like that would get people's attention.
Hmm.
Still great, elegant. We probably on the speed round should have switched the order of those two, but it still shows really well.
Yeah. Yeah,
Elegant.
it doesn't completely get lost in the Ben Rennes, which is good.
That's the sort of dram I want when I'm suffering through, I don't know, maybe an overly long family dinner that I want to escape, but I can't. I think it would give me,
Do you have
I
any
wouldn't
experience
share
with
it.
those in the last couple days?
Yeah, I wouldn't share it. It would be
Yeah.
just for me. I'd pour them, I don't know, something decent like Pulteney 15, but that
There's got to be at least a few people that have had that experience in the last day or two, I'm guessing. I had a little bit of that on Christmas Eve. Hopefully my brother's not listening or doesn't watch this afterwards.
it's the time of year. I think all is forgiven after it's over.
Mhm.
You gotta just let it go. All right, Evan. So tell us about your poll questions because you've got more than just.
Yeah, so I've got the first and second favorite from days 2020, 21 to 25. And then I did a 20, you can do the whole 25 you get to choose from that's multiple choice for that third vote for the faves. And you're just honor bound to pick five. If you don't want to, I can't really stop you at this point.
I mean, they could pick 25 and just
They totally could.
ruin the data. Not that we really are clever enough or forward thinking enough to do anything with said data, other than just reference it at the end of the tasting.
So, Andrew, if you can see through that list, if you were going to do like a quick take on your top five, what would you select?
Oh man, I am gonna have to look at this because as we've mentioned, my attention span is about the same as a shrew. Um, Looking through the list, I would say probably top five would include uh, definitely the Linkwood 25,
Mhm.
definitely the Aaron cask that we bottled. I think that one just punches way above its weight.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's on mine.
and I know there's a few others in here that kind of stunned me at the time. Uh, Speyside 25, I really like that. It was kind of gooey.
Mhm.
Bowmore 18, and then you know what? I'm gonna say the Society one because I think that's one of the best Society bottles we've had in recent years through the calendar. So,
Yeah,
um,
agreed.
and if I had a sixth honorable mention, I think it would be that. Wasn't there like a G&M Ardmore?
Yeah, that Ardmore was really cool. The
Yeah.
2000 from day 10.
So, Evan, how about you? If you had to pick your top
So I
five,
did do a top five on the blog. I did it kind of very, very quick just because I was running out of time. But I did pick the Moline Lake Takara just because that was so out of left field for me and it was a lot of fun to write up as well as taste. Also picked the Bowmore 18 just because that's just a perennial dram for me right now. Compass Box Orchard House, again, just a whiskey that I love so much, especially when you factor price into it. The Aaron KWM cast like you and the SMOS 25 Speyside. I would have picked doing it now, the SMWS. That's another one like the Linkwood where I figure, and I'm not just saying that because Robin Kelly are in the room.
you're
I
not
swear.
just saying that because Robin Kelly.
Exactly. But near the end of the calendar, it was just kind of a bit of a rush to get it all done since I had a lot on my plate. But there there's not anything in this whole calendar that I'm upset that I tasted. Um, some great drams in there. The Armoric, I think, was a huge surprise for a lot of people, including myself, which was cool.
Yeah, it even got a vote, so that's cool.
Yep.
And it looks like all but one person have voted, so we're getting close to calling that. Now, I haven't,
Yeah, I'm just gonna put it out there.
if you had to pick three from tonight's tasting, your top three, what would they be?
Uh, it would be the Society to win, followed by the Bowmore and then the G&M liquid.
Yeah. I would just completely reverse your order, but same whiskeys.
Mhm.
So very cool. Uh, all right. Are you going to share the results now or?
Yeah, they are shared, I believe.
Okay. So yeah, the winner of tonight's round one is the Society Bottling. Will you join the Worm Tub Clubs? How about that? Followed by the Bowmore and the Linkwood. Second
Mhm.
favorite is the Linkwood, then the Pulteney tied with the Bowmore. So everybody got a vote tonight. You love to see that. Everyone got a vote for both. Now, Evan, how about top drams of the calendar for people?
Yeah,
What were
so
the people's
it is a tie for first place with 14 votes each between the SMWS, Will You Join the Worm Tub Club, and our Aaron, which I can't disagree with. I think those both deserve to be up there. Um, Next up with is 10 votes is the next one, it looks like. So 10 votes, the Bowmer 18 is second place on its own from the looks of it. And then with 9 votes, G&M Liquid 25.
And then it
There's a
looks like
lot to
it's
scroll
a
through
tie.
here.
It's a tie between
Yeah,
the Stateside 25, the Daft Mill 15 cast strength. Yeah, just those two.
yeah. I'm kind of surprised by that. I will say one thing this calendar and the Uber calendar has done for me, which I really enjoy seeing, is that it's reinvigorated my appreciation for sherry, which has been lost over the last couple of years. There's been some good sherry drams out there, but it's just hasn't been something that's clicked with me. And there were multiple on this side and the Uber calendar that just floored me and easily made it into my top 5 and top 10 because of that.
Mhm. Cool. Uh, all right. Before we wrap, a couple quick things. I did want to mention the whole, we're not sure we can do this again next year, but um, I want to say like third or fourth week of November, we were paid a visit by the AGLC, who asked about the calendar and then asked us to not sell anymore. We had thankfully, and to their credit, they were very nice about the whole disagreement, but they asked us to stop selling them. We had about 12 or 15 left. We probably could have made another 50 on top of that. But we just decided we were going to abide by what they said. They were allowing us to fulfill the ones we'd already sold. People could pick them up. Um, I am going to be bringing this up with them in the new year, and we may at some point ask for people's assistance on this, or maybe in a letter or an email of support. I don't do anything right now. And this is something that, we want to try to have a conversation with rather than turn into a fight, because I disagree with their interpretation and I'd like to have the chance to have that conversation first. But we're not sure if we'll be able to do this again next year. We're going to try to figure out in the next 3-4 months if we can, because if we can't, then we will try to go back to doing the calendar as it was, or a version, something like that. It would be really unfortunate because I think we managed to get the box redesigned in a way that we really like. It's funny, other than two people on social media, all the comments on the bot, like the tiny glass we've had, were positive. Like people loved how cute it
Mhm.
was. Someone did accuse us of shrinkflation, which was sort of funny given we dropped the price by 40%, and put in better products than, frankly, any year since year one. Um, but we really feel like this allowed us to really up our game and put out something that's as good or better than anything else on the market. And we hope that we'll be able to do it again next year. And we're gonna be calm and mature about this, and hopefully find an amicable solution that'll allow us to do it again, because I think that is our ultimate aim here. And we've heard that from people too. Like I've bumped into
Mhm.
dozens and dozens of people in store who said this is, for some of them, their best calendar ever. For some, it's the best since like we started doing this, or maybe they've only done it. This is their first time and they had no idea what they were missing. But I've had other than the two early comments, every single other person we've heard from has been overwhelmingly positive about the whole thing. So great.
Yeah, I just echo what you said, and just uh, jump onto that. This doesn't make work easier for us to do it this way. As Harmony and Jordan and the rest of the and Sammy and the KWM staff can talk about, this means that we have to pour like over 10,000 sample bottles.
It's close to
Well, yeah. And but the way everything ended up looking, like, credit to Andrew for pushing this across the finish line. These bottles with the labeling, they look fantastic and they look professionally done, which is not something you can say about a lot of the stuff we do at Kensington Wine Market.
And it like, to be honest, like this whole thing, I think the reason I'd be most disappointed is it took so much effort this year to
Yep.
get the box redesigned, and it costs money to do that. It costs money to get the labels and all that stuff done, and we're so happy with how it worked, and knowing all the lead times it took this year, next year was going to be a breeze. But
yeah, next year was going to be the year we got it done quicker for the first time. But along with that too, like, credit to all the whiskey staff and all the staff at KWM for helping put this together. But this was, to my mind, the first true curated Kensington Wine Market whiskey calendar, because when it came down to it, and we've had a lot of luck in sourcing 50 ml bottles from different producers and companies in the past, and they have worked with us, which is great. But this was one where we just got to choose what we thought would look and work really well on a calendar. And it was like a 100% curated because of that. And it was so much more exciting for me, at least, and probably for Andrew, and hopefully for you guys too, just to see what else was in there, just because we're not stuck with what's available and already bottled.
Exactly. Well, yeah, we don't want to belabor that anymore, but hopefully we'll be able to do this again. And there's a decent chance you might get an email of support or asking for support on this in the future. One other thing I would ask too, because things like Google, Facebook likes and reviews. If you like this, if you appreciate the work that went into it, and I can say just from Evan's standpoint alone, probably takes at least an hour or two to write every blog post. There's a huge amount of work that goes into that. So big thank you to Evan on that. But if you like that and you think what we're doing is cool, give us a shout out on Google. Like, I know it's a lot easier to do that when you're really angry at somebody, as opposed to that you just really like something that happened. But those are one of those things where we can always use a little bit of love, because you don't often get it acknowledged for the good job, but the one time you make a tiny mistake, you get jumped on. So as a small business, it makes a difference.
Absolutely.
Well, everyone, thank you very much. As Evan said, big thank you to our staff at KWM for putting in all the hard work to get this done this year. Evan, thank you for all the work you did on the blog posts and feeding information for our social media. I want to thank everyone who bought one of these calendars and spent your hard-earned money on it. And I'm glad to hear that the vast majority of you seem to have really enjoyed it. Wishing you all a very happy New Year, safe, prosperous 2024. Don't forget about the MS Whiskey Festival in January if you're in Calgary, and our store events online and in person. And I guess we'll see you next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year, everyone. Thanks, everyone.